Hello everyone, welcome to another repair video. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Mad Repair. Mad Repair is a content creator on YouTube and also a supporter of the channel, and he's creating content on various different games consoles. So if you're into this sort of stuff, I highly recommend checking out his channel. There'll be a link in the video description and also in the iCard above. So just click on that, head over to his channel and hit the subscribe button. He has many videos on the channel and all of those are great videos for repairing different issues on consoles such as Nintendo Switch and things like that, and also some other issues as well with, for example, laptops and things. But I just want to give him a shout out. Let's help him get to 1,000 subscribers. I want to also thank everyone for 10,000 subscribers on my channel. We hit that on live stream last night while I was doing this video, and it's been an absolute hell of a ride. But thank you everyone, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. Right, now I can read through the emails and figure out what's actually wrong with it. Right, so he said, I can't show you because of personal information. He said, "Hi Phil, came across your channel while looking into a fault on my son's Switch. Great work. Would it be possible for you to have a look at his Switch? It's got error 2101 0001. Okay, so this console has got error 2101-0001. So if anyone's watched any of the previous videos I've done on this, you'll know pretty much what's going to cause this error. It's going to be the fact that the charge port is damaged, and I can see some visible damage. I'll show you that under the microscope in a minute. I'm not sure how well that's going to come across on camera. However, when we get a damaged charge port, it has a knock-on effect with M92T36, and that causes error 2101-0001. So if we take a look, when we plug it in to a charge port, to a charging cable, we get 0 amps drawn, so it's not charging at all. Let's flip it around, see if it charges that side, and it doesn't. So we're getting 0 amps current draw. The battery's dead, so what I'll do is I'll take it apart and plug in a non-good battery, and then we'll see if we can replicate the error. So that's going to be the plan. The plan for repair is very likely going to be replace the charge port, which is definitely visibly damaged. I can see it with my eyes. So replace the charge port and also replace M92T36, and that's going to hopefully fix the error. Right, so like I said, the first plan of action is going to be to plug a non-good battery into this. So let's try and find a non-good battery. Let's disconnect that. And I'll connect that one up, see if that one's got any charge in it. I do need to make a breakout cable for these. Let's see if that's got any charge in it. And it appears so. Or maybe not. There we go. Okay, yeah, it has. So, yeah, this is coming up with error code 2101-0001. And like I said, that's usually a knock-on effect of the charging port being broke. The charge port on this is very visibly broke, and I'll show you that under the microscope when I get the board out of the chassis. And chances are we're going to have an issue with M92T36 as well. So that's probably going to need changing. Sometimes just removing the charge port can do it. That's the best case scenario, is just removing the charge port fixes it. But worst case scenario is M92 will have to be changed as well. Yeah, so you can clearly see we've got some pins sticking up there. So there's one pin sticking up on the end, which is going to be a ground pin. The end pins are always ground. And then we've got 15-volt input, which has touched one of what I believe is, I think it goes to the filters on the back of the board. So that one, what's happened here, if you take a look, the pins have come away from the plastics, and this pin here, which is voltage in, it's a VIN rail, so this pin here has come up. This is what takes in either 5 or 15 volts, and that's touched that pin there. So what I'll do is I'll remove the port from the board, clean up the pads, make sure the pads are fine, and then test, basically. Put it back inside the case and put an on-good battery in its testing. So to remove the port, I'm just going to use hot air only. Some people like to use low melt solder, but I highly recommend against it, personally. So some people will recommend using it and say that it's a lot safer. However, my personal opinion, and this is just an opinion, but my personal opinion is that it's dangerous. And the reason for that is because we can use low melt solder on the back pins. So we can use low melt solder on these pins, we can use low melt solder on the ground legs, but we can't use low melt solder on this row of pins here underneath the port because we can't get to them. So I prefer not to use low melt solder. I just believe it's a lot more risky. I'm just going to heat up the board. In that general area, and then I'm going to focus the heat directly on the port itself. I'm going to take my nozzle off actually. I'm using an Atten ST862D. I'm using 480 degrees, but the reason I'm using such high temperatures for removal is purely because the temperatures for removal, I don't really care about this port. So I don't care if I melt this port because it's coming off anyway, and it's going to be replaced. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat up the entire port. Just hold the heat over the top. And then once the port moves freely by tapping it with the tweezers, I know it's ready to come off. So this is about patience. The traces on here are very fragile and we don't want to tear them. So just have patience. And you see how I just tapped that and it flew up? And I still waited. And the reason I still waited is because by waiting an extra 5 to 10 seconds, I know that the pins are going to be melted when the ground legs are melted. And as you can see, we get absolutely no trace damage whatsoever doing it that way. No trace damage at all. Those pins, or those pads, are absolutely perfect. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put it back inside the chassis and basically test it out and see if we still get that error code. If we don't, then it's just going to need a port replacement, and if we do, then it will need M92 replacing as well. Right, so now the board's cooled down, let's pop it back in the housing. Let's flip it around and turn it on. And we still get the error code with the port removed. So this is going to need M92T36 replacing, unfortunately. So let's run some tests and confirm where the issue lies on this. Right, so I want to start my testing here at the port. and the reason for that is because right here there's a 3.5 amp fast blow fuse, and that sometimes goes, and there's a chance it could have gone because the pin that was shorting out was the 5 volt pin or the 15 volt pin, so there is a chance that that fuse can have blown. So let's pop the multimeter into continuity mode then. So continuity mode is the mode that's going to beep when we complete the circuit. So if we pop one probe on ground here and then we pop another probe on this ground leg here, you'll see we've got a beep, and the reason for that is because the path is complete from one side of the probe to the other, and that's what tells us whether the circuit's complete. We just listen for a beep, so we don't have to look at the multimeter, we just listen with our ears. And I'm going to pop one probe on this end of the fuse, the other probe on this end. We should have continuity. We do, so that fuse is good, and we're reading 5 ohms and dropping, which is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. Next I'm going to check this filter here. This filter typically goes as well when we get an issue on the data line. This filter is actually linked to the CPU, so if this blows we're in trouble. But the console does turn on, so we shouldn't have any issues with the CPU, because it does at least turn on. Let's check this fuse, this coil. And the coil's good. Absolutely fine. Okay, right, so onwards and upwards, literally. We're not going to test the battery IC because the battery IC is fine. If it wasn't, then it wouldn't be turning on. So what we're going to do now, we're going to pop one probe on ground and we're going to check these caps around here. I'm going to say we're going to have a short on the third cap, the one on the right. So these 3 caps that are standing up here, it's usually the third cap that goes. So no short there, no short there, no short there either. Okay, there is a short there though. It usually is the third cap, but apparently not this time. But this one here is short. This one's fine. This cap here is going to tell us whether we're going issue on P13. So this bottom cap here is linked to P13 USB, and that's fine. So P13 should be absolutely fine. Let's flip it around and we'll check P13 anyway, make sure we've got no blown data lines. We don't appear to have, which is great. That means we haven't got a, well, we shouldn't have to change P13. But let's check it anyway. No short. Hang on. Hang on. No short. Okay. Good. So P13 is fine. So it's going to be M92T36 and a USB port. And that should fix the issue. So let's get M92 changed first. So I'm going to use 420 degrees Celsius at 50% airflow to remove the chip. So the reason we use a lot of heat around here is because the RAM is very close. So I'll remove that chip. And I'm going to grab a new chip now. Okie doke. Right, so pin number 1 in the orientation I've got it at the minute is top left. That's indicated by the arrow. So I'm going to put a bit of heat in the board. I'm not going to replace the solder, I don't need to. I'll drop the chip roughly in place and tack it down. So I'm not fully soldering it yet because now I want to add some flux. So the reason I don't add any flux to start with is because I don't want the chip flying around and sliding all over the place. So I'll drop it down and tack it into place first, and then add flux afterwards, and then flux helps it to flow. So add a bit of flux there, and then I'm going to flow it into place. I've still got my hot air set to 420 degrees at 50% airflow, and this is going to put itself into place in a minute, and it'll solder itself. As soon as we see these go shiny, and there we go. So surface tension pulled that in for me. As many of you will know, I'm a lazy technician, so I get the chip to do all the work. But that chip is going to be perfectly soldered. There we go. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Perfect. Let the chip do the work. Let the chip do the work. Right, so next I need to replace the solder that's on here. So this I do need to replace the solder because I need to make sure that we've got nice uniform joints. Right, so all I'm going to do, and I'm going to explain something here because someone mentioned something on a comment. Someone mentioned that they basically said, I can't believe you don't replace the solder. And basically, there's no need to replace the solder. So when I add leaded solder to this lead-free solder here, it's going to change the composition. It's going to completely change the composition of the solder from lead-free solder to leaded. The only time that we need to clean the pads before we work on it is going to be when we've got corrosion, because we never want to solder on top of corrosion. But when we're just working on it to replace chips and ports and components, there is absolutely no need whatsoever to replace the solder that's there. We don't need to remove the solder. We can just add solder to it and it'll change the composition. There's nothing wrong with the solder that's there. It's just, number one, there's not enough, and number two, it's lead free. So all we have to do is just add solder to it. So one thing I am going to do is I'm going to wick away the ground legs as much as I can. And the reason I'm going to do that is because when I put the new port on, I want it to solder on as easy as possible because there's plastic inside it. Basically, I just want to be able to solder it on as easy as possible without melting the port. So I'll just wick away the ground legs, but I'm not going to wick away the pads. And we don't want to wick away the pads anyway because they're very weak as it is. These pads are very weak as it is, and there's no point whatsoever in risking damaging those pads by wicking the solder away from them. Because wicking can pull those pads. Even just adding solder can pull the pads, so wicking especially. So we're going to remove as much solder as we can. There we go, that one's nice and clean. So I'll get some fresh wick now. So I'll just cut the wick away. But like I said, we don't want to put any more additional risk on this than we have to. And by wicking away the pads themselves, it's putting more risk there. Right, let's flip the board around and just try and clean out this hole properly. Retro Robbins, thank you for that £5, mate. I really appreciate that. So let's just clean up the pads of isopropyl alcohol. We've got some more solder this side, so it's travelled through. Didn't actually clean it, even though it looked as though the hole was empty. But we'll wick away this side as well. And you'll notice I'm moving away from the pads. I'm not going near them pads with the wick. There we go. That's as clean as it's going to get. I'm not going to sit here struggling to clean it. It's not a big deal. Right, let's add some more flux. I'm just going to pop a bit more solder on these pads just to make sure we've got enough. There we go. Nice uniform pads. And we are ready to drop a port on this puppy. 420 degrees at 30% airflow. And I'm just going to hold the heat over the board. So you'll notice I'm not putting the port anywhere near it at the minute. And the reason for that is because I want to put some heat in the board first. And I'm going to try and not let that flux drip onto my leg. It's going to be very hot. And just drop that port on. I'm going to press and hold, move the heat away, that's not quite soldered, but it's soldered enough to the point where I can put some solder on the ground legs now from the other side. And then I'll reflow the port and get it into place properly. So I'll add some flux. I'll have to wick that away in a bit. But now I'm going to reflow the port again. Actually, I'll wick it away now because I don't want it to be travelling all the way through. Okie doke. I'm going to wick that away from that screw hole. Don't want to leave that there because otherwise we're not going to be able to screw it in. There we go. Right, and now it's time to reflow this port into place. So I'm going to increase my airflow to 50% and I'm going to increase my hot air to 460. And the reason I'm increasing the airflow and hot air now is because it's pretty much already soldered down. I just want to reflow it so it's sitting flat and level. And because there's already heat in the board, I don't need to use hot air for as long as well. As long as you keep the air moving, you're not going to melt the port anyway. Not very easily. I'm going to press and hold. Wait for the solder to cool off. Just like that. Right, that port should be soldered. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the port, shall we? So I'm going to give the port the nudge test. So the nudge test is basically where we'll just nudge each pin gently and just make sure it doesn't move. I think a couple of these could do with a little bit of a touch up. They're not, well, they are soldered, but they're not as soldered as I'd like them to be, if that makes sense. So all I'm going to do is just tap on them with the soldering iron, and that's going to touch them up. And there we go. So I'm going to clean this up now. And we should be pretty much ready for testing now. Should be good to go on this. I'm just going to flip the board around. Just clean off this side. And there we go. Okie doke. Right, so there's a new port. And that looks beautiful. And a new M92 chip as well. So what I want to do first is I want to make sure that it turns on. And that we haven't got the error code anymore. So we shouldn't have the error code now. So what I'll do is I'll make sure it turns on. And then as long as it turns on, I will use the customer's battery and make sure that it charges the battery fine. Right, so known good battery. So like I said, first thing I want to check is make sure that it doesn't have that error code when I try and turn it on. And then I'll use the customer's battery and charge it up. There we go. Absolutely fine. So that's all good. So now this console appears to be working, but does it charge? And more importantly, does it dock? That's the question. So to be able to find out if it docks, I need to charge the customer's battery. It's either that or replace the battery, and I don't want to do that. So I'll charge the customer's battery. So what I'll do is I'll just grab my 15-volt charger. Let's see if we get a charging symbol. So this battery's completely dead, but let's see if we get a charging symbol on both sides of the port. I probably need to clean the port out as well, to be honest. There's probably flux in it. So let me do that first, actually, because there's likely going to be flux inside the port. Oh, okay, well, Alright, well that's turned on. Right, so that's charging that side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that get to 3%. And when it gets to 3%, I'll know that it's actually charging and that it's not back feeding into the back into the charger. Because what can happen is it can say it's charging, but in actual fact it's draining the battery back into the charger. So I'm not going to say this is fixed until I see it charging both sides, the battery percentage increasing both sides, and docking. So we want to see it dock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw some stuff in while we wait. So let's just add some fresh thermal paste onto the CPU. Right, we're on 9% when it's charging that way. Let's just test game card slot. That works fine. Excellent. So the game card slot works. So what I'll do, I'm going to flip that round. And it's charging that side as well. So let me make sure that increases. Let me make sure that increases to above 9%. Right, well this is on 13%, which means that it's charging both sides. So we should be good to go with docking. Capture card. And there we go. That docks absolutely fine. No problem at all with docking. Let me just sync up some controllers. Cool. Yeah, so that appears to be working. Okie doke. And internet settings. Right, okay. So there is a hidden message in this Wi-Fi password if you're new to the channel. Whoops. How do I delete? Subscribe. So the hidden message there in the Wi-Fi name. Internet's working. Right, so that's just about going to do it for this video then. So the issue that we were facing with this one was that it had the 2101-0001 error code, and that's typically an issue which is related to M92T36, and it's a knock-on effect when we have a damaged port. When the pins touch together, it blows the chip and that causes the error code. But by replacing the port and by replacing M92T36, we was able to get this console to turn on without the error code, charge both sides of the port, and dock to the TV as well. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any comments or questions, you can leave them down in the comment section down below. I will always do my best to answer. And if you want to see more repair videos where I fix mainly consoles but sometimes other things too, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on bell notifications so that you're notified every time that I upload. I also now have channel members, so for as little as £1.99 per month you can support what I do here, and you can do that just by clicking on the join button down below the video. But that's going to be it for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, see you later. Bye for now.